And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for the morning hours Wednesday. Big swath IFR here over the western part of the state from the Arctic coast right in across much of the Bering Sea southward to the Aleutians, and staying VFR here south central Alaska, or actually areas east and south of the Alaska Range right into the Gulf. VFR for the Panhandle and also up here the northeast interior. And for the afternoon, that area kind of thins out and lies from northeast to southwest here from the Koyukuk Valley there on down into the bigger area there out over the Bering Sea, and a zone of IFR here over Bristol Bay. Stays VFR. Again, east and south of the Alaska Range, including Kodiak Island, looking pretty good for the Alaska Peninsula as well as the eastern Aleutians. And from St. Lawrence Island northward, VFR in the forecast still for the southeast coast. And then for Thursday morning, IFR over the eastern interior with a band of areas of IFR extending southwestward into another larger zone here, coming up to the Kuskokwim Valley, into Bristol Bay, out over the northern Bering Sea, right up to the strait there. And then that kind of links up with some more IFR here over the western Bering, and from roughly Adak on out to the west. And then for the afternoon Thursday, IFR here, again, right up to the Yukon Delta coast into southwest Seward Peninsula, and then extending southwestward here to the far western Aleutians, another zone from Matka Island into the western Alaska Peninsula. Areas of marginal VFR here through the interior, good VFR to the north, good VFR to the south of that zone, and a little bit lower conditions there for areas of the Arctic coast. And now there's marginal VFR here moving in to the southeast coast. But for passes tomorrow, split the difference here, go IFR at times possible for Anaktuvik, and marginal VFR for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, another VFR day coming up there, rainy also. Windy, possible marginal VFR, maybe mostly on the north side there. And for for Isabel, IFR, go for IFR from Mentasta, Tanita. I'm sorry, let me back up. I think I was saying IFR. Isabel, marginal for windy, Isabel VFR, Tanita, or Mentasta VFR, and Tanita VFR, Portage VFR as well, and Chilcoot and White VFR. Moving on to the freezing levels, 6,000 feet here up into the Gulf of Alaska, over Kodiak Island, about 2,000 feet, still up over southern Alaska there, into the northern Panhandle, and out over the Bering Sea here. And from there, taking a look at icing, we've got several areas of icing potential here in the shaded areas along the Yukon, lower Yukon River Valley out to the Delta. Another one here farther to the east, and then one up there for the central north slope to the Arctic coast. And I'd say a much better potential of some light to isolated moderate rime icing out here with more moisture over the west central Bering Sea, Adak and Atka out to about Kiska or so. And from there, taking a look at the jet stream, we've got high pressure here down to the south, wind flow coming up and over the top of that, 90 to 100 knots, 90 knot northwest winds into the western Alaska Range there, and lighter for the southeast coast and areas to the north. 9,000 feet, more of a west-northwest flow now cutting across Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island into the Gulf at about 40 knots. Lighter winds to the north, and then a stronger westerly wind with 50 knots there. Approaching the western Arctic coast, mostly out over the Chukchi Sea. South to north flow into the Aleutian southern Bering Sea at about 45 knots. And not too shabby for the southeast coast at this elevation, or this zone across the Queen Charlotte Islands. And for 3,000 feet, light variable winds for the Panhandle, much of the eastern interior. Narrow band of some 35 knot winds there coming up in toward Fognak Island and the Barrens. And northerlies 40 to 60 knots there for the, southerlies 40 to 60 knots across the central Aleutians into the southern Bering Sea. And for turbulence, look for considerable moderate turbulence here for the eastern Aleutians westward to Adak, and also possibly here for the Barren Island areas and maybe the northern eastern portions of the southeast coast here. Light to isolated moderate mechanical turbulence for the North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula areas, and then light to isolated moderate turbulence for areas of St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, on up to the northwest coast.